right. Howdy and welcome to another episode of BizTech Twist. I am your host, Bob Coppage, CEO of Simplex-IT, Grand Poobah, whatever, crotchety old geek. And once again, we are going to talk about basically business and technology, but with a slightly different perspective. And I've been challenged lately about remembering people's names. So I decided I need to bring in somebody named Bob. And it took a while, but I finally found Bob
There you go.
Bob Sullivan of InfoGrow. And tell us a little bit about yourself and InfoGrow.
Well, right. It's Bob Sullivan. So, InfoGrow.
So far, so good.
And really, InfoGrow is devoted to Microsoft Dynamics platform, mostly in the CRM space, marketing automation, customer service, and project management. We're also doing a lot more in nonprofits, so we're really pushing out a lot more in that segment.
Cool. And you're located?
Cuyahoga
Falls.
Downtown Cuyahoga Falls.
And I would be remiss if I don't also bring up, you and I have known each other for
a bit.
Because we're old. You also opened up a storefront.
Well, back when the pandemic started to subside, the city opened up Front Street in Cuyahoga Falls.
I remember that.
And so I have this old bank building that you remember.
Yep.
And we consolidated.
I wasn't sure if I was going to bring this up. His closet was the safe.
Was the vault.
Was the vault for the bank.
Right.
So.
Right. Kept my important ties there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All those war ties.
I know. And that was exciting. That was cool. But anyway,
we consolidated the staff and the team and moved them upstairs, and then opened up a retail gift store and art gallery there called Looking Glass Gifts and Gallery. So we're now running that too. Had nothing to do in my spare time, and so
absolutely. You'll have to tell me what spare time is like. I've heard a lot about it. So here's the thing, and when I was thinking about this topic, and the topic is essentially the whole concept of cloud and configuration. And like you said, you do all the dynamic stuff, and especially on the CRM side, there's so much marketing on the part of cloud vendors, whether it be for ERP solutions, MRP, CRM, whatever the alphabet soup is. And half of their marketing is about how easy it is to deploy. And you hear the term out of the box. And I thought it'd be interesting to have a conversation to talk about the goods and the bads of out of the box when we're talking about corporate level applications, not from a technical standpoint, but from an organizational. And the 7 other people that I asked wouldn't come here on to join me. So you're the one who finally said, no, I'm kidding. You were the first one I thought of because, like I said, the CRM. So I'll just start it out with CRM is not an application. Microsoft CRM is not an application that does well out of the box. Would you agree with that?
I have never installed an out-of-the-box deployment in all these years. Keep having clients ask for it.
Right.
We want something really simple, just out of the box. But by the way, here's the 6 different things we have to do that are not out of the box.
And that word simple is used a lot, isn't it? Is that whole thing. And it's a tough concept when you think about it from the client perspective, because they're looking at it from we do this, then we do this. Simple, easy peasy. So therefore, it should be simple for a computer to do it, and it should be simpler for a cloud computer to do it, and so on and so forth. So how do you deal with that type of situation?
Well, you listen a lot, and you challenge clients. You really have to hold their feet to the fire to understand what's your expected value for the system. Really, what is the top 3 things that you want to have at the end of the day here? So 9 months out, how would you measure whether you're successful or not? And get at that point. Because most people think that a CRM installation is the same as installing Word. You install the software, people start to use it, it's fine. And it will tell me my processes, my best practices.
Right.
It will tell me my sales process. And the answer is no, it won't. It's going to tell you, here's a spot for putting in your sales process. What is it? And that's where people really fail at CRM. They're expecting it to give them answers versus know those answers before they start installing it.
And I would also say, not just from a CRM standpoint, but also if an organization is looking to put in an MRP, an ERP system, any of these types of systems, unless everybody in the industry agrees that this is the process that should be done, which I have no idea what industry that would be, you're going to have some flexibility, both the curse and the blessing, that you're going to have to decide.
The number one question that really stumps an organization usually is, what is your sales process? And is it in writing? And you'll find that often it's not, and that there may be a half a dozen sales processes wandering around. and guys, the computer is not going to understand it and straighten it out. It's only going to aggravate it. You're only going to know faster you don't have a sales process.
Right. Yeah, because at the end of the day, when you talk about systematizing, and you can make this claim even if you're systematizing it with people, if you don't define it, if you don't document it, if you don't create the guardrails, then the system is not going to work for you. It's going to work against you.
Yeah, a CRM system is all about, and the interesting thing, us both.
But what is a CRM? Well, let's talk about what CRM is from a business. Let's start with a business perspective.
Okay. Well, what it is that, first of all, and sounds like, almost being heretics to the Microsoft, flag we both have outside of our building or something like that. Only 20% of a successful CRM has to do with the technology.
Okay.
80% has to do with what behaviors you're trying to reinforce and monitor. So if I've got a sales process, or I've got marketing leads, or I have a customer service, system, what am I trying to do with having data? A CRM allows you to get one truth of the data and one view of the relationship you have with customers across all those areas. So across sales, across marketing, across service. And so many organizations are sitting out there with data silos everywhere, Excel spreadsheets galore. And the idea is, let's get it all in one place so we can understand this relationship and not have to keep going around to different systems to figure it out. And so that's what a CRM really does, is bring the data into one spot and allow you then to set up the behaviors you're trying to monitor and see them in dashboards. So you're able to say, I'm self-monitoring what I'm trying to achieve here with having the system.
Okay, so when we talk about that, and I want to also get back to another word that you used, which I find is a hotbed of either no one pays attention to it or we pay too much attention to it or whatever, and that is value. Because it's hard to measure what value is from an organizational standpoint. But in the CRM, it's the relationship management. So we are going to try to create some kind of process, the sales process, the marketing process, the engagement, user experience, customer experience. We're going to try to create the guardrails for it. We're going to try to create what direction is our best practice.
Yeah, customers go down a buying process, and you're going down a selling process. You've got to align the two because they're different, and there's different expectations than both. Mm-hmm. How do you know what that process is, and how do you measure it where you're at in that process? That's what a CRM should be doing for you. Actually, we've coined the CRM. Everybody thinks stands for customer relationship management. We've changed that to can't remember much.
So it's my life. It's basically
my life.
This is a cloud version of me.
I don't need to have Post-it notes everywhere.
Right.
I don't need to have emails going around everywhere. Go look at it in CRM for the contact record and find out where you're at with this relationship.
Well, but and beyond that, to make sure that the way it's being done with party A, whether it be a salesperson, marketing person, whatever, is the way it's being done with party B. Mm-hmm. And because the more you customize and standardize your processes, I mean, I hate to put it this way, the less expensive the person is that can do these things. Mm-hmm. You don't rely on that person's knowledge, experience, skill sets, whatever. The system can actually short a lesser experienced individual.
Well, it's also that, there's been studies forever done about how many contacts it takes of an account manager to a person buys. And I've seen everything from 12 to 18 touches.
By the way, don't do the 12 to 18 touches in a 4-hour period. I've learned that's not good.
That's not it.
No. That's advice from my dating days. But.
Yeah, I can appreciate that one. Stalking. Yeah.
Tomato.
But the interesting thing about that, although it takes those maybe 18 touches, an account rep will stop at 3 or 4 making them.
Right.
So that means somebody else is doing it. And what you want to use then with your CRM system, well, let's not bring the sales rep in to maybe touch number 8.
Okay.
Let's use marketing or customer service as touches before that time, then bring the account rep in, and then supplement it still with maybe marketing or customer service. So we're still only using our account rep, which is maybe our higher valued person in terms of that area, still letting them make the minimum number of touches, but we're still making the 18 touches. Through integration of marketing automation, through integration of other people in the organization.
Okay, so we're going to take the actions of the individuals who are going to be part of this system. Mm-hmm. The system is going to be configured to both empower those people to do things the quote unquote right way and automate as much as possible.
Sure.
And make it measurable so we can basically turn back and say, okay, this worked, this didn't work, let's modify, let's tweak, so on and so forth. And then at any point in time, you've got KPIs that the system is generated and managing, so you've got an idea. All of those sound like what you saying earlier. You have to have the process understood.
Yes.
And I'll go one step back, as I threatened to, value. Mm-hmm. What is the value? And because to me, in many cases, organizations don't define value consistently enough, both internally and to their clients.
They'll do it the first time they go out to buy a CRM and then totally forget about it.
Right.
And so, 9 months down the stream, they don't remember why they installed this tool. And a good example of value, I see value in 2 places right now with a couple current clients. 35-person group that going to trade shows, they go to half dozen trade shows all year. They're generating an enormous amount of leads that they're handing out to account reps and don't know what happens to them.
Right.
There's all kinds of value on the table there. Why are we spending money on a trade show? What's happening? How many of these leads turn into actual sales? That can be measured. And you can set up what you're expecting the account rep to do with it, what you're expecting marketing to do with those leads before they go through the process.
Right, and the cost per activity by systematizing it, by creating a process, not only goes down by using these systems, but also is measurable. So you can look at that and say, oh, okay, the results we're getting out of this isn't worth that.
Yeah, is this trade show worth our time?
Yeah.
Is, this blog post or whatever, a banner ad that we're buying. How do you track that all the way through a sale and keep track of it and know what happened? That's where the value comes out.
And that's not something that's going to be getting back to the original concept, that's not something that's necessarily going to be in a CRM system out of the gate. You have to have that discussion, that discovery, that whatever.
Right.
And you then have to also, in some cases, you're going to be making definitions or use terms, and you need to make sure everybody on your team,
especially in the sales process.
Yeah.
I have seen people who have no process to people who have, 15 steps in their sales process.
Right.
And no definition of terms. Everybody's a prospect.
Yep.
Well, okay, how can you have marketing help you supplement that if everybody's a prospect?
Right.
How do you know where you're at in the sales cycle with them? If it takes 6 months and they're still at step number 3 and you're calling them a prospect, well, how do you move them forward? How do you get help for that? You have to be able to define those terms.
Yeah. One of the stories I tell frequently was when I was CIO of a manufacturing company. One of the things when I first came on board was none of our reports agree, or none of our sales reports agree. Now, this was been back in the 90s.
Hasn't changed much.
Yeah, but
it's surprising.
And it's interesting because you were talking about data silos earlier, and it was literally the same data, but they all generated different reports off of it. So you had accounting. If it doesn't hit the bank, it's not a sale.
Not a sale.
You have manufacturing. once we receive the order for the materials, it's a sale. You have marketing. Hey, we set the lead. That's a sale.
That's a sale. Yeah.
You know, and then franchise and this, that, and the other thing. And everybody had their different definition of what a sale was. And of course, their definition was accurate. Their definition was correct. And the reports reflected that. So one of the things that I had to do was to sit everybody down and said, all of you are wrong except one of you. And who is it?
Yeah.
And then create that standard and then just come up with different terms to measure, because all of those other definitions were valuable situationally. But how do you get that consistent
and they spend their time in an executive meeting fighting over whose data was right.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and rather than how do we take this and make it actionable to the next step.
Yeah. And it was interesting because it took me about 2 or 3 months, as I recall, to get everybody to get their egos out of the way, to accept the fact that I'm going to have to call it booked.
Yeah.
You know, not sales, or I'm going to have to call it installed, not this, that, or the other thing. And that's all we had to do was just change that one definition. But it was hard. It was hard to do that because change is resisted.
Well, each group wants to look good in terms of the organization, so the value they're bringing. But
no, absolutely. So getting back to the original, so at what point, because we also use the term historically, surrender to the software. And I haven't heard that term quite as much as I used to. It used to be a fairly frequent thing. And I remember, again, the company I used to be CIO for, we had a homegrown sales and marketing and all that kind of fun stuff. And it was written in Foxborough, so that shows you how old the bloody thing is.
I've got a client right now who still has something in Foxborough.
Oh, so do we. So do we. Yeah, and it's one of those where it still works.
Yeah.
And whose fault is that? But we had that, and they decided they wanted to go, and they started taking a look at some of the CRM and some of the ERP light solutions. This is back with SAP and PeopleSoft and all that kind of fun stuff. And it was clear to me, and I was part of the 6-person team I was head of the team that went through the process. It was clear to me that we would be surrendering a ridiculous amount of who we were, the essence of what we did and what we did well, or we would have to customize that software within an inch of its life. And ultimately, they went ahead with it. I was the only one who voted against it, actually. And I ended up leaving the company a couple of years later because I just couldn't. One of the main reasons was I couldn't go with it. But the CEO came back to me finally before I left, and he said, "Yeah, you were right. We shouldn't have gone with it." Mm-hmm. How do you measure, especially if you're not 100% sure what your process is that you're trying to standardize to, versus what the software can or can't do versus what you're currently doing or not doing? I mean, it sounds like a mess.
Well, the first thing you have to recognize is that it's a maturity process, because you're going to change.
I will never recognize any aspect of my life being a maturity process, sir.
And it's going to have phases. Don't try to do everything at once. You're not going to get it right the first time.
Okay.
And so start small, and start then with things that you want to have your users achieve, and they see the productivity benefit of it in the first 90 days. And then schedule other things as multiple phases out. And don't, so that way you're seeing small incremental steps that you're successful at.
That almost sounds like a marketing plan.
And you keep moving it out.
By going for those small victories, and I've talked about this before, whiff them and NIMBY, what's in it for me and not in my backyard. If you don't address those as far as change agents within an organization, people are going to fight you.
Well, that's why I said 80% of it has to do with things that are not technology based. Yeah. It's all that change management area and understanding that part of it.
All right, cool. I'm going to think about that for a second while we go to a break for a moment.
Sometimes the most effective IT support model for organizations is a combination of internal IT employees along with an MSP partner that's experienced in co-managed IT services. Consider Simplex-IT. We work in partnership with your existing IT team, providing the support and resources for your organization to excel. Plus, our CEO, Bob Coppage, is the recognized industry expert in co-managed IT services and has authored the only 2 books on the topic.
That's me.
Visit simplex-it.com and look under services to learn more.
All right, we are back with Bob Sullivan of InfoGrow plus Storefront. And one of the things I want to get to is, so we were talking about some of the risks and valleys and all that kind of fun. It really gets down to when you're talking about a cloud application. And by the way, we are talking about CRM, but you could easily be talking about, actually you could even more talk about from an ERP standpoint or an MRP or any kind of organizational system that is cloud-based or on-premise for that matter, but clouds are becoming more and more the solution for SMBs. But it's not you bought it, it got installed, everything's working. It's not a one and done.
Not a one and done.
Okay, and so the term we were using during the break is it's a journey.
Very much a journey. You're
Okay.
going to mature through it. And
Again, you're going to go back to mature.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Well, it's almost like, reading readiness or something like that. It's going to grow with you as you evolve.
As long as you approach it that way.
As long as you approach it that way.
Because if you don't, it's going to go off. Well, it might grow, but for no good reason.
Yeah. Well, what really will happen more than anything else is that your users will stop using it. They'll sit on their hands until you get it right.
And you hear that a lot, especially on the sales side. Mm-hmm. Where the salesperson basically says, and I've had this when I've been interviewing salespeople. You talk that, why did you leave your last position? Oh, they had me entering all this stuff. They had me doing all these things.
Yeah.
Where they're basically, and there could be truth to it, depending upon how they implemented it and how they did it, whatever. But they were absolutely fighting that process of change and the cultural process that you're trying to make changes to.
Yeah, we like when, there shouldn't be more than maybe 3 objectives when you first start putting in a CRM.
Okay.
You have to first recognize you're going to change the culture. You're going to start sharing information. That's a big change.
Yep.
You're going to have to collect the information, get it out of everybody's Outlook, get it out of everybody's file drawer, have it in one place. Those 2 are big enough changes right there for many organizations.
And especially since you could have situations where a subgroup of the organization has their silo.
Right.
And by God, it's the best darn silo anyone's ever seen, because I've been working on that Access database for years. It's wonderful. It's got all this data. But it doesn't
absolutely
expand. It doesn't present itself well to anybody else. But for them, it's productive.
Well, and that's the third then pillar. What's in it for them?
Right.
Whether it's an account manager or the marketing person or the customer service person, what is the system going to do for them? It can't add on to their workload. It's got to start in terms of how do we take things off and make it more streamlined for them.
So how much counseling are you doing with the client?
Quite a bit.
Quite a bit. All kidding aside.
Quite a bit.
Because you're really getting them, they have to want to change. They have to want to I hear you. I hear what you're saying is you want to be able to do this. Yeah. Are you willing to make these changes to help this go?
Yeah, a customer will say, I want an out-of-box installation, how much? And it's like, well, okay, you're unique. You tell me you're unique. Everybody is. We have to do a discovery and design process to figure out what this really is.
Yeah.
Where's your data at now?
So so I'm taking a look at an organization. What organization would need something like a CRM type of application? What would be if a CEO is looking at their organization and they say, we want to do better in some of the client relations areas, what would you say is the difference between we need to put a system in place versus we just need to do some things better?
I would say that they're trying to maintain a relationship with their client. It's not a transactional sale.
Okay.
So that's probably the first piece of it. Even if they're selling through distributors and someone else is managing the sale, they're still trying to manage that relationship to get in front of the end client. So that's probably a critical element. Usually for a CEO, the biggest challenge is I have no pipeline. I have no idea where things are in the sales process, or what stage they're
Now,
at.
would you say that they have no pipipeline, or they don't know what their pipeline
is?
Okay.
They get a pipeline from an account rep. It's called the napkin forecast.
Yeah.
They sit down over a drink. Well, this is what I'm going to close this month.
Yeah.
And it's on a napkin. Here it is.
And then a month later, this obviously I didn't close this one because this happened, and I would have done this except for this happened.
And no insight.
But next month.
And no insight in terms of what will move it from one stage to the next stage. So this particular item, it's been in the close stage now for 9 months. When's it going to happen? Oh, any day now. Well, they don't know for sure, and because they don't know the steps that need to be taken by the client to close it. They just are talking about their steps, so they haven't found that out, and they're not working through it, and so there's not a common language by the sales statuses, and that's where they get in trouble a lot.
Mm-hmm. So we've got siloed data. We've got poorly defined processes. We don't have necessarily measurements that allow us, tell me no bad news. I don't have to make bad decisions.
Yeah.
Kind of things. So that's kind of the situation where management says, okay, we need to look at something that's going to systematize this.
You don't know the relationship you have. Marketing is talking to the client, sales is talking to the client, and service is talking to the client, and there's no sharing that information between the three.
Okay.
We've got one now that it's a hoot. The president just loves their service department. Does a knockdown, fantastic job. They charge for it. They're a profit center. They're great. They're even fixing the competitors' products. But you know what? Sales doesn't know that they're fixing equipment that's 12, 15 years old. Why aren't we selling them something new? They have no insight into it. They're not seeing it.
Oh, boy, that's interesting. That's interesting. And that goes beyond systems. Mm-hmm. That's that whole, does everyone within an organization that has an external connection, whether it be service, sales, marketing, whatever, are they familiar with what would make a good opportunity?
Right.
So that they can either present it to the client or potential client or bring it back and communicate.
Bring it back out internally.
Okay.
And you can't do that without a database underneath this.
Right.
And there's just too much data.
Yep. That's interesting. So Microsoft and Dynamics. So that's been going on. I mean, that's I don't want to say that's old because that's the wrong term to use. But it's mature.
It's mature. It's it's not the number one leader in the group,
right?
But it's rapidly gaining because of how it fits with the Office 365 platform.
Yep.
All the emails integrated, Word integrates, Excel integrates. Out of the box, it just does that. And Microsoft owns the whole platform.
Right.
The whole everything.
One throat to choke.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And so there's and Microsoft is not perfect by any means.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, that just, wow.
But they lay in wait, they watch, they spend most of their energy on the research and getting it right.
Yeah.
And building a better mousetrap from it.
So we're right now, how has everything that's changed over the past couple of years? And we can talk about pandemic, we can talk about work from anywhere. We can talk about the whole supply chain redefining. We can talk about the impact of like Amazon on big boxes on little boxes, and so on and so forth. So right now, one of the things the one thing that keeps me awake at night from a business standpoint is commoditization. Mm-hmm. Is the day that our services become a commodity is the day I have to compete only on price. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That scares the bejeebers out of me. And it would seem like having some definition or better definition on the CRM side is a good strategy, a strategy that may not present itself immediately, but a strategy to avoid commoditization. Would that?
I think so. A good 70% of our business is fixing Dynamics installs from people who have been led down the path by big Microsoft.
Yeah,
it's simple. Anybody can do it.
Absolutely,
you can do it yourself. Any person can install it. And about 9 months later or a year later, they realize that we're getting no value out of this and no one's using it.
Okay, so let's cut the time frame down a little bit. Let's say if you're 3 months into it, what should you be? What are some of the signals that are saying you might not be as clean on your install as you thought you were? Does that make sense?
Sure. I think it has to do with you haven't defined what your 3 objectives are for having the system.
Okay.
And you have no way of measuring it.
Give me an example of what the 3 objectives would be.
Well, okay, a good example is I've got a group now that's been running CRM for 15 years. No lead tracking is happening. In other words, they go to trade shows, they generate 100 or so leads, hand them out to sales reps, and never hear again. What happened to them?
Okay.
And so, the CFO is sitting there, why are we measuring this? Why don't we know if this trade show is worth our time? And of course, marketing is, we just do what we're told to do.
Right.
And sales is, they're not qualified. And that's the argument that happens in terms of it, and just as an impasse then.
And again, the company I was talking about earlier, that was always the issue, is sales would basically say that the leads aren't qualified. And I remember one time we actually implemented a telemarketing system. Again, this was in the late 90s. And I thought it was the dumbest thing I ever heard of, for us to actually call people who weren't buying the product and so on and so forth. But then they were calling people who we had appointments, but they didn't buy, to follow up on it. And I thought this was the dumbest thing, because I was a genius then. And it turned out that half of the appointments, the salesmen weren't showing up.
Weren't showing up for them.
And I came back and I said to the CEO, I said, this justifies this entire project right here. It's ridiculous. All we got to do, we can start nailing down why is that?
Yeah.
And if they truly are bad leads, how do we clean them up? And if they truly are bad salesmen, how do we clean it up? And management decided to quit asking that question.
We don't want to know. We don't want to know.
It truly was that.
We don't want to know.
Because there was that, this is the way we've done things. This is the way we do things. They weren't willing to make some of the difficult cultural decisions.
I had a company that goes every 2 years to Germany to an international trade show. They take 2 of their $700,000 machines with them.
Okay.
Chemical extrusion machines. They came back with 300 leads after 2 weeks there. They were just excited as couldn't be. We got leads. Boy, guys, we're going to give you a file of each of these leads, divide it up among the sales reps, and say, go out there and prosper. 30 days later, how you doing these leads? Oh, we haven't talked to any of them. And the answer is that, I'm doing other things. I'm closing other deals. You've got me doing customer service work as a salesperson, so I don't have time to do this. And so that's what was going on. Imagine the amount of money shipping those 2 machines over. 2 weeks in Germany by 6 people. All of that went into it, and nothing came out of it.
Or how much money they could have saved if they instead shipped over 500 small rubber ducks.
Yeah, probably.
And they'd end up, literally, as dumb as it sounds, they'd have the same results.
They'd have the same results. So. And so what a CRM does, more than anything else, there's no place to hide.
Yeah.
Because now you got all the data in one place.
If it's done right.
If it's done right. If management says that we're not going to keep silos anymore, they've gone away, everything goes in CRM where it's not true. Now you got no place for anybody to hide. The managers to hide, the account reps to hide, marketing to hide. That's what you start getting.
So you have to have that conversation. Are you willing to act on what we learn?
Right.
And not learn necessarily from the customer data, but learn about what we're doing or not doing with the customer data or the customer relationship.
Are you willing to share information?
Yeah.
Even before that. Are you willing to, like you said, admit you have different groups calling names of the same process throughout the organization. Are you willing to standardize this and start looking at what everybody's doing?
Yeah.
If you've got a thesis and you don't want anybody to know, I'm not willing to do that.
And one of the things I've noticed is in some cases where organizations have the overall, call it strategic challenge. So they're sitting there in a situation where they're not closing sales, the business isn't going well, so on and so forth. In some cases, they want to be very knee-jerk reaction, ready, fire, aim. We're going to
new product.
Absolutely, new product.
We're going to do this. Do something.
Absolutely. And in other cases, everybody's trying really hard, so we don't want to upset the apple cart because then we won't be able to try as hard. And management is like, we're just being supportive of our team.
Account reps, God love them, like to be order takers as
Yeah.
much as they can.
Yeah.
And so they'll avoid hard work if they're making their quota. And most organizations then have undervalued their territories. They should have 2 people working that territory rather than just one, because there's other customers not being serviced.
Right.
We find that the best coach for a CRM system is actually a strong marketing person. More than sales, because sales doesn't like CRM. It's I got to fill it out. It's more work, and the sales manager is trying to hit their quota for that month, and recognizes that if I don't achieve that, my life expectancy here is less than 2 years. So why invest in a CRM for the next person? Marketing, though, gets data. I'm responsible for lead generation. I got to understand what leads are doing with it. I'm also responsible for customer retention.
Right.
So I need data. And we're seeing a lot more organizations where marketing is taking the lead and then telling sales where they should go next.
You realize that any salesperson listening to this just shut this
They'll hate that.
show off.
They'll hate that.
Yeah.
They'll hate that. But it's actually makes their job easier. Because
If they're willing
to
do that
understand
process. Yeah. And that gets into whole change management.
Right.
And it gets back to the whiffum and NIMBY, what's in it for me and not in my backyard.
Yeah.
That's why I hate people.
Works so much better if it was just barcode everybody.
Oh,
keep track of it.
It really would. It really would. That'll be our next topic. So, closing question. Organization is sitting back and wants to change. They're not sure what, and they're not sure how. But as far as the sales process, and that includes the marketing side of things, the service side, all of that kind of fun stuff, what's the first thing that they should do? Give me a week long. What should they do in a week?
What they should do in a week is first, focus on a CRM that's going to allow them to grow with it.
Okay.
Because it's starting off with almost any CRM will break the culture, change the culture, and start getting all the data in one place. Where it limits you is the ability now to grow into other phases. So you want to be careful in terms of selecting a CRM because you want to be able to select one that you can mature with, that you can change, you can grow with, you can integrate it to other systems. You can bring data into it to start giving that one view of the relationship.
So would you take that to the point of if someone pushes a CRM because it truly is easy to implement, because it doesn't do a lot of these things, that is a lazy goal.
They'll meet their initial objectives for that first year,
and then that's it.
They'll be frustrated from then on.
Right.
And it'll be hard to change because everybody thought we did that once.
Right.
We did that already.
Okay.
And so that'll limit their horizons then.
So really there's almost a gut check of are we willing as an organization to really invest the time, the effort, the cost, both soft and hard dollars, to really reinvent our entire process.
It's even before even reinvent to know what the process is.
Yeah.
Because so many of them don't. I can't tell you the number of times I sit down with 3 top executives and be told that, yeah, we have a written sales process and none of them can deliver it to you.
Yeah.
And you find out that no, they don't. They've got 6 processes running around.
Yeah. Do you have standards? Yes, plenty of them.
Plenty of them. Where are they at?
Cool. So, and I'm going to turn this into kind of a self-serving,
Sure.
You get to advertise yourself and all that kind of fun stuff. Whether you do the storefront or your CRM,
Either way.
I'll leave that to you. Are you aware of any small, medium organization that has successfully implemented a full-blown CRM system by themselves? Successfully.
Mid-sized organization, no. You need a project team internally,
Right.
to do this because it's not a technology project.
Right.
If you turn it over to IT, and IT is not of the mindset of where we're trying to manage effective use of information and break down silos. If they're just the mindset is how do I control budget.
Yeah.
It ain't going to happen.
I would almost say if you've made IT running the project,
You're in trouble.
you're in trouble, and it's your own damn fault.
Yeah. It's got to be, it's got to be a project system of where you balance it against different service needs in the organization and recognize that this is what do we want to measure. If we look at this a year from now, what did we measure and are we successful or not?
Right.
And limit that scope down. But everything else says these are gap items. We're going to get to them,
Right.
but they're not immediate.
Okay. And I'm assuming you'd be willing to talk to somebody.
Absolutely.
That'd be really weird if you said no.
No, we don't do that. That's what we do. I mean, literally, I've got great tech people who can deploy the system, but most of ours upfront consulting, getting into those issues.
So how does someone get in touch with you if they're interested?
Well, obviously the website is the best way to find out how we approach, infogrowcorp.com, or give us a call. And the phone number here is 330-929-1353.
But you do not have access to the safe.
The safe now has actually been turned into a chocolate vault. You in the chocolate? That's in the store.
Okay.
The safe has become a chocolate vault.
I don't know what to do with that, but I want to try.
Stop in. Got chocolate from the world going into the vault.
That is cool. All right. Well, Bob, thanks for
Thank you
coming
so
out.
much.
This was fun. And again, you know the story. This is BizTech Twist. Bob Coppage, CEO, Simplex-IT. I'd love to talk to your organization about managed services, co-managed services. And I want to talk to you about a serious problem that's happening in this world, and that is we are ignoring thumbs up on computer screens. Do your part by using your mouse to show a thumb up that you care, because it's important. And also, they love it, thumbs up. They love it when you hit on subscribes or bells. For some reason, there's a Pavlovian response on that. But again, as you've heard before, if the thumb isn't inverted, it's pointing downwards, that means they want to be left alone, and you should respect that. So, Bob Coppage, BizTech Twist. Catch you next time.